Hello there, my name is Kayla, and this is Dark Tales from the Road. Happy Wednesday, everybody. Before we get started, I would like to introduce you guys to another one of my favorite podcasts. They are called Paranormal Exposed. This is my type of podcast, guys. Anything paranormal, I'm here for. So let's go ahead and listen to their trailer.
Do you love a good ghost story, tales of the paranormal, and sightings of the unexplained? If so, the Paranormal Exposed podcast is right up your alley. Join me every Wednesday as I guide you through a new spooky episode. Listen in as I give you the spooky stories and the facts to back them up, or poke a few holes in their stories. Whether you are a skeptic or a believer, this is a great way to explore and to expose the paranormal.
Thank you guys so much for listening to that and supporting that show. Definitely go find them on social media and anywhere you get your podcasts. So today we are going to be going to the Whispers Estate in Mitchell, Indiana. I'm very excited about this one because it is a very, very creepy house with a lot of activity. So if you're new here, I always start with a little history about Indiana. We're going to start with that, and then we'll do a little history of Mitchell, and then we jump right into Whispers Estate, a little history, and then into the creepy. So let's go ahead and get started. So let's talk about Indiana, guys. So it is known as the Crossroads of America. Definitely right smack dab in the middle of the Midwest. It sits there with, it borders Lake Michigan, and so it borders Michigan, Ohio, Kentucky, and Illinois. So definitely right in the middle of that, all that. A lot of Native Americans were the first to settle in Indiana, and that was as early as 8,000 BC. It's crazy. But its first recorded history was in the 1670s when Europeans came and they claimed the territory for the Kingdom of France. So France ruled there for a while, but they didn't really settle into the area. It was just kind of they came, they conquered, and that was it. And so during the French and Indian War, or the 7 Years' War, that's when France was defeated by Great Britain and seceded its territory to them. So then Britain held it again for like 20 years until the American Revolution, when they lost. Then afterwards, land was open. U.S. settlers are pouring in, Europeans are pouring in, and that caused chaos between the Native Americans and the settlers coming in, which just sparked tons of war. Sorry I said Indians. It's hard because it says Indiana, and so yeah, I'm sorry. So if you guys are Parks and Rec fans, a lot of this will sound familiar. I'm a huge fan. So when I started doing Indiana history, I was like, oh my gosh, I love this. I have Leslie Knope just in my head through all of it. So with all the conflict between the settlers and the Native Americans came a battle of Tippecanoe in 1811. So if you remember the whole Tippecanoe and Taylor tubes, I can't get it out of my head. And so that was won by the future president William Henry Harrison, who, as you know, died in office right after he, yeah. Anyways, so the name of Indiana is, I think, pretty obviously named because it's known as the land of Indians. So it was admitted into the Union in 1816 and then that was the 19th state, and then its capital has always been Indianapolis starting in 1825. So over the 1800s, a lot of hardship just swept through Indiana, including bankruptcy. Like the state had to claim bankruptcy. But then by the early 20th century, they really got into manufacturing. And so that was huge and attracted a lot of immigrants and migrants into those industries. So now Indiana is starting to really pick up. But like most places, the Great Depression hit and there were some major setbacks. But again, infrastructure started to come in and they built the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Their auto industry blew up, urban development, and there were two other wars that helped with the industrial growth. And also, like in the late 20th century, they became a leader in pharmaceuticals. There were huge innovations coming up about it, and so they had a company that started and just blew up from there. Some interesting facts about Indiana. So, during the Civil War, it was a huge place that provided shelter for runaway slaves. So, a huge farming community. It was known as Newport, but it's now Fountain City. It became, quote, Grand Central Station of the Underground Railroad due to a couple named Levi and Catherine Coffin. They helped more than 2,000 runaway slaves make their way to the North for freedom. A town called Bedford in Indiana is known as, quote, limestone capital of the world. So the limestone's gorgeous. And so it was really known for its very light color. It was very easy to cut. And it is said that the limestone from Indiana actually helped to construct the Empire State Building, the Pentagon, and the National Cathedral in DC. But it was also used at multiple different capitals throughout the U.S. Like I talked about, they built the Indiana Motor Speedway, and the first ever Indianapolis 500, it was a 2.5-mile track, and it was on May 30th of 1911, which was just 2 years after it had opened. And it can house 250,000 people. So it's the world's largest spectator sporting arena. That's insane. I have been to a NASCAR race in North Carolina, and it's unlike anything I've ever experienced. And the traffic is unreal just trying to get out of the parking lot. We sat for like 3 hours just trying to get out, but it was a very, very cool experience. And we were right by the pits. So it was really cool. It was actually a wedding gift it was so fun. Moving on. So there was a county jail in Crown Point that was supposedly escape proof. But if you've heard of this man, John Dillinger, a huge bank robber, he actually escaped from his cell in 1934. He used a fake pistol carved from wood to threaten the guards, and he used a sheriff's car to get away. So he went past the Indiana-Illinois border, and then the FBI got involved. And it was just this massive manhunt that ended up in his death, which was on July 22nd of 1934. And lastly here about Indiana, Santa Claus, Indiana actually receives thousands of letters that are addressed to Santa Claus every year. So it's like a Christmas legend. And each of them is responded to individually. I had no clue. Like, maybe my kids will try that next year. So let's jump into Mitchell. I try to keep the history short, especially if my subject is really long. The hauntings and paranormal of Whisper Estates is all very similar, very straightforward. The history's not super long, so just, So Mitchell, Indiana, it was a railroad town during the 19th century. And what came there was the Chicago, Indianapolis, and Louisville Railroad, which was actually called the Monon, M-O-N-O-N. And it was built as a north-south line from New Albany to Chicago. So it always passed through that area, and so that eventually became Mitchell, Indiana in 1853. Then another railroad came in 1857 from, it was the Mississippi Railway, but it was later called the Baltimore and Ohio Railroad. And so that was able to link Cincinnati and St. Louis. So huge part of railroad history is in Mitchell. So at the intersection of the two rail lines is where Mitchell was built. A surveyor came in for the O&M Railroad. His name was Ormsby McKnight Mitchell, and he came in to survey the area. He was a West Point graduate, and he was a professor at the University of Cincinnati, and they had him come in to plan out the new town, and in exchange, they let him name it. Okay. And this guy sounds amazing. So he grew up in Lebanon, Ohio. He was an attorney, a notable astronomer, and then he became a major in the Union Army during the Civil War. And he is actually best known for ordering the raid that became the Great Locomotive Chase. And he was known as, quote, Old Stars. He died of yellow fever while serving in the Union Army in South Carolina. So he was a big deal, and he planned out Mitchell, and in exchange, it was named after him. The town was eventually incorporated in 1864 and became a city officially in 1907. A lot of manufacturing was going on in Mitchell. There was a man, his name's Ralph H. Carpenter. He's a big deal. So he had a carpenter body company, and he started manufacturing the wagon, the truck, and a bus. So this was huge. So school bus body production actually continued there until 1995. It's pretty crazy. So he literally invented the school bus. School buses are a big part of Mitchell, and I guess there's this whole area just lined with school buses. Definitely cool to check out. So if you've heard of a man named Sam Bass, he is an outlaw and a train robber. He was born in Mitchell, and his kind of story is he was orphaned at 13, and he was lawless, definitely getting in big trouble. He became kind of this icon of the Wild West, of the American Old West, because he robbed banks, he robbed stagecoaches and railroads, and then he was killed by a Texas Ranger the next year. I haven't heard of him because, his career was very short. He was born in 1851 and he died in 1878. So not a huge long criminal career, but he is known for robbing gold. So in 1877, it was the largest robbery in the Union Pacific Railroad's history. So Bass was a part of that. Mitchell is known for one of their most famous heroes, astronaut Virgil Gus Grissom. He was born in Mitchell in 1926, and I know most of you have probably heard the name, but here's kind of a little backstory about him. He was one of the 7 Mercury astronauts selected by NASA in 1859. He piloted the Liberty Bell 7 spacecraft in 1961, and then in 1965 he commanded the first manned Gemini flight. And it was a 3-orbit mission. So they accomplished the first orbital trajectory and first lifting re-entry of a manned spacecraft. So that's where it all began. And then sadly, he died in 1967 when the Apollo spacecraft flashed fire during a launch pad test at Kennedy Space Center in Florida. Now, Mitchell's downtown is known as a historic place. It is actually on the National Register of Historic Places, which makes me super excited. Like, I want to go to Mitchell now to really experience that downtown area. If you guys are from Mitchell or have been there, let me know. I would love to check it out someday. Let's jump into Whispers Estate. I just think it has an amazing history and has a lot of activity because at the estate, it's now a bed and breakfast. When you stay there, they put notebooks, I think, in each room, and you jot down the experiences that you have. It's pretty crazy. There's actually a Facebook group for the Whisper Estates, and it's run by the owners of it, and they've posted pictures of what people have said in the notebook. And it's like everyone has some sort of super creepy incident, and people will post stories on there. I have a story from it that I will tell towards the end. So definitely check out their Facebook page if you're curious. I didn't include a lot of the stories from the notebooks, but it's just one after another. It is so full of different stories. So if you didn't get enough, I'm sorry, but man, check out that Facebook page. So it was built in 1894. That is the earliest records that they have found for it, the Whispers Estate. In 1899 or 1901, there's different sources that say different dates. So, yeah. A man named Dr. John and his wife, Jessie Gibbons, Dr. John and Jessie Gibbons, they bought the house from the original owners, who was Dr. George and Sarah White. So Dr. John and Jessie Gibbons, they couldn't have children. Sadly, everything they could during that era, it just wasn't happening. So they adopted abandoned children or orphan children so, they could have their own. So one of the children that they had, she was 10 years old. Her name was Rachel. So Christmas morning in 1921, she snuck out of bed. She wanted to see her Christmas presents, and they were right by the fireplace. We all kind of put them there. Well, Rachel she came too close to the fire, and her clothes caught on fire. She was extremely, very, very badly burned. She actually died in the house 2 days later, succumbing to her injuries. And John and Jessie were heartbroken. They couldn't have kids. They adopted these kids to give them a better life, and their daughter was killed. So Rachel is a huge part of the house and a huge part of the paranormal that goes on there. It's said that you will hear disembodied footsteps, and very small, light-footed steps are very common, like children's. They believe it belongs to Rachel, but there's another ghost child in the house. So through the years that it's been owned, other tragedies have happened. So there's a story about a little boy that fell down the stairs and died. And psychics have actually picked up his spirit and is able to communicate with him on different occasions. You'll also hear heavy footsteps. But when you hear heavy footsteps, you must be very cautious. So with those heavy footsteps also comes growls, pushing, scratching, and even biting. So when you go to their Facebook page, they have tons of pictures of scratch marks on people. They all look very, very similar. They're in different parts of the body, but it's pretty insane. That's a huge thing that is known for the paranormal. So unfortunately, even with the death of their daughter, another tragedy came about when their infant daughter, only 10 months old, died suddenly in the master bedroom. So they think it was cot death, or what we probably refer to now as SIDS, but they never really found out what happened to the child. And so this is all in the master bedroom is when she passed away. And then Rachel was downstairs by the fireplace. So the mother, Jessie, she actually died in the master bedroom also. She had double pneumonia, and including like the grief and stress that she was going through from losing now a second child, she died only 2 days after the baby. So when guests sleep in the master bedroom, it is all kinds of crazy. So they're often awakened and they have very, very labored breathing and coughing. So it's like you feel like you have pneumonia. Some report that someone is sitting in the chair, or like they're in the chair and they feel something around them, something touching them. The most common activity that happens in this room, I'm scared of, because the closet doorknob will jiggle for a few moments, stop, and then the closet door will pop open. And I actually have a video that I'm gonna tag in my sources that you guys should definitely check out, because it's this group. I watched their longer episode on YouTube also, but they are sitting in their room and they had asked Rachel, Jesse, someone to open the main door to the room. A lot of the rooms there have like 2 ways to get in. It was so many different things when it was owned, so it's kind of an odd place. So the camera is looking at this door. The door's kind of black, and then all of a sudden he pans to his left because another door has opened wide, like just out of nowhere, just opens and opens really, really wide. And then he starts going, it's like this hallway or something, and another door is open that they knew they had shut a lot of the doors. And so completely unexplainable, no one there. Really cool video if you guys want to check that one out. It was actually during their live recording, so that's pretty cool too. So that would freak me out so bad. You're laying in bed, the doorknob starts jiggling, and then all of a sudden the door pops open. Just, whew, I get chills thinking about that. It is actually the most reported activity, with so many people coming and writing in the notebook or telling someone that it's happening, and it only happens for like 5 minutes. That's it. But even 5 minutes seems too long to literally hear the door knob rattling. So they are like, people who stay there know to shut the doors, because they could experience them being open. Or if you're that scared, just leave them open, you know. So Whispers Estate, it was not a happy home. The Gibbons had a very hard life there. And that included the father, Dr. John Gibbons. He obviously was a doctor. He's a very prominent doctor in the town. So he had his office on the first floor of the house. And, you know, during the time period and what was happening in the medical field, it is 100% likely that many patients had died there, and he practiced for over 26 years. There is another daughter documented. Her name was Helen, and she actually tried to get Dr. John Gibbons committed to an insane asylum. She said that John was perverted, that he was inappropriately touching female patients, and he was known for doing gruesome abortions on his patients. That's disgusting. And it is believed that there's 4 graves in the backyard, along with like pit graves, and the pit graves supposedly hold amputated limbs, organs, and aborted fetuses. But like, who knows what else? You know, he could have been experimenting on different patients. And so like during that time, they can't get abortions, so they have to do it illegally, and some of the practices just are awful, and a lot of those women end up dying from it. So he died in 1944. and it was 10 years after his wife Jessie. So the house was given to Helen, and Helen sold it instantly. She wanted nothing to do with that house. A lot of it probably because of Dr. Gibbons, but the tragedy that happened there, like if Helen was around during Rachel and the baby, that and Jessie, her mother, dying, that's a lot. I don't blame her for wanting to get out of that house. So there were a lot of owners and occupants that came after them, and more tragedy struck. So in the 1950s, there was a man who died in the upstairs bathroom, and he wasn't found for 3 days. It's gross. And also, there was a special needs boy named Gary. He also died in the home. His family was renting a room on the second floor. And some say that he died from falling down the front staircase. But others say it was from his shunt malfunctioning. So again, special needs. Who knows what having it? No, take that. And after Gary had passed, the family moved out, and so then the father, Gary's father, his name was Virgil, he came back to the house to get some items they had left there from in a closet there, and he suffered a fatal heart attack in the closet. Crazy. So haunted and bad luck, omens maybe, very, very creepy. This one gets me too. So in the doctor's bathroom, on the first floor, the guests will feel an earthquake, like tremors. Even upstairs, one of the guys in one of the 303 paranormal that I watched, he literally said he started feeling the ground trembling. So some of the beds will tend to shake violently when guests are sleeping in it. Like, could you imagine? Oh, sorry. I was actually sleeping one time during an earthquake when we were in Kansas, and it was crazy. It woke me instantly. It felt like the world had tilted and then came back or something. So, that was not much. But having your bed shake violently when you're sleeping, just poltergeist, guys. Like, that is freaking scary. They'll also smell cologne, like from the doctor or from the gentleman who had passed. They'll smell aftershave, cigars, meat, cabbage, and dirty medical bandages have been noticed by visitors. Ugh, like the other ones, oh well, but the dirty medical bandages, just gross. So there was a group of women. I don't know if they lived there or if they were just visitors. I think just visitors. They really took in a lot of compassion for Rachel. So when they went there, they brought a doll for her. Rachel's room had a lot of dolls in it. She loved her dolls. So they took the doll to her room, and this doll is still in the room. It's in a case. I doubt you can open it, but it was found at the foot of the stairs. It smelled like smoke and was slightly burned. So you can still see this doll when you do tours or go stay there. It's very creepy looking. I'll try to find a picture of it for Instagram also. So in 2006, it was bought after being vacant for years. So they came in to start restoration, and that's when even more activity just amped up. So, and they were saying the house just continued to increase and increase, and that's why it was named later on the Whispers Estate, because a lot of the guests that were staying there said that they heard disembodied voices whispering in their ears. Just, I don't know what they said, but like it gives me chills. Just kind of, I wonder if you could like feel the breath, or just, my mind goes crazy. Allegedly, there's a portal or a vortex that runs from the house, that runs through the house from the front parlor to the third floor attic. So they say that that attic is literally known as the heart of the house. So people, you can stay there, you can stay in that room, but when people stay there, they report having horrible nightmares, and they can hear someone trying to get in the room. Again, like the doorknob jiggling. No, thank you. There's also been reports of a shadow. They call the shadow Big Black. And psychics have come in and spoken with this, and they say it's not of this world. It's mostly in the doctor's room, but it has been seen throughout the whole house. So, demon, poltergeist, whatever you might think, that's very scary, especially if it's known as Big Black. It's probably big. There have been a ton of EVP sessions that have found so many different entities in the house at different times. But it is said you don't need a recording device to hear the voices at the Whispers Estate. Like, that's freaking creepy, because you watch a lot of these ghost adventures, ghost hunters, and even a lot of these smaller people on YouTube, and a lot of it comes from recording equipment. Like, they can't hear it in real time. They have to go back. Like Zach Baggins, he's always stopping to tell us this is what our recorder picked up. So it is insane that you don't even need to have that. Just go in, have a great time at a bed and breakfast, and then you will hear creepy ass whispers. And what's even creepier is that a lot of young women say that they hear Dr. Gibbons whispering in their ear, and then along with it, feeling like they're being grabbed or groped. Just no thank you. Like, that's drawing the line, guys. So again, a lot of guests have claimed seeing beds and couches visibly shaking, and sleeping on beds or couches, they shake. So a ton of investigators have been to this place. Sadly, Zachy Baby has not been there. Ghost Hunters has not been there. There was like a paranormal encounter or another one, but I could not find the episodes anywhere. So, but a lot of smaller investigators, all that, they've been there, and they will, quote, do rounds. So they will go to the house at different times throughout the night. Then they'll go back again in a different pattern, or like they're constantly going back, finding more and more. So one of the spots that's really big for them is the servants' quarters. So they will go in there and do whatever, and then after they leave the room, this just massive, heavy wooden door, it will slam hard by some force, by some presence there, but the last person is not pulling it shut. They're leaving it open, and it's like they were done. They wanted them out. Don't come back. Just hearing that heavy door slamming would be insane. There are reports that guests will notice different smells. I know we talked about smells of the man, which, cologne, aftershave, the cigar, tobacco, meat, and cabbage, and the medical bandages, but they'll also smell baby powder drifting throughout the house. So very creepy, especially having a baby died there. Very interesting. This dates it a little bit, but this said that guests have reported recording their camcorders being moved by a presence and disturbing the video, and very, very, very weird stuff. For all you babies, a camcorder is a recording device that you had to literally put on your shoulder because it was so big. But yes, I had one growing up. They kept getting smaller, and now they're just on your phone. So it's pretty crazy. So would you guys spend the night there? Like, would you? I don't know if I would. I'm kind of chicken shit when it comes to stuff like that. Like, I love the ghosts and the paranormal, and I want to experience something so bad. But then I'm like, oh my God, I'd be so scared. Like, I hate haunted mazes or some haunted houses, and the people like come at you. And even if they don't touch you, it's bad. Our city had a haunted house at the VFW for Halloween, and we went, and they're like, do you want to go upstairs or downstairs? The upstairs is probably better for the kids. And I was dying. I was so freaked out. Even like the fake spiders on the wall, but they were all like, all the people were dressed in black with like a white mask on, and I just like couldn't even look at them. I was so scared. And my oldest, just like me, so freaking scared. But my husband and my youngest were like, whatever, this is lame. And he's 6. But then, like, downstairs, we didn't know what was going on. You could just hear screams. And some, like, teenagers had gone down. They were ahead of us. And you all kind of congregate back at the same spot. They would come back up the stairs. And you were going by it, and they're just screaming their heads off. And there is a Pennywise chasing after them, literally running after them, giggling. It was horrible. So I don't know. I grew up in Colorado. I've always wanted to stay at the Stanley, and I never did. And there's probably places here in Montana that I could check out too, but gosh, I don't know. I feel like I wouldn't sleep. I would be so stressed out. Yeah, and I can get to when I'm super anxious. I just feel like I want to puke. So it would be an interesting night. Maybe one night. Just one night, but we'll see. So I have kind of a list of the different areas in the house and what they are known for, what happens in that area. So I kind of want to go through this. So in the parlor, there are dolls on the piano who will, if you touch them, it will bring about bad luck in threes. So, three things happening in a row. So don't touch the dolls, guys. And there's a lot of dolls in that house. Don't touch them. Guests are known to be scratched, pushed, and bitten. There is a mirror in the room that people claim to see very strange things in, or like in behind them, things like that. The chandelier in the room has been known to shake violently. The piano plays on its own, and they have seen full-bodied human and non-human apparitions. No thanks. So Dr. John's, his waiting room, it's also known as Big Black's room. You'll see the big black shadow, light anomalies all over, and then women have been touched inappropriately in his waiting room. In his exam room, and one of the, I don't know if this was his exam room, but in like the 303 Paranormal, they were in this room, and there's like a bed, and there's a female mannequin laying in the bed, and it is so creepy looking. When it popped up, I was like, oh, there's an apparition in the bed, but it's just like the creepiest doll ever. I definitely urge you guys to watch their YouTube video. It was really good. So in the exam room, again, women have been claimed to be touched inappropriately or in a violent way also. Just, yeah. Candles being thrown. They have vintage crutches in there, and those move on their own. Guests tend to feel nauseous. They'll taste blood in their mouth and get migraine headaches. That also happened in the 303 Paranormal. A guy got a massive headache. And then if you are carrying flashlights, they'll be manipulated. Kind of like how I loved on Ghost Hunters when they would do the flashlight thing where they would almost unscrew it, but then they could talk. That was like my favorite thing. In Jesse's room, the mother's room, which is master bedroom, you will smell rotting flesh and baby powder. I would really hope to just experience the baby powder. Again, doors open on their own there. You will find Gary, the young boy that fell down the stairs supposedly. He likes to stay in the closet in that room, if that's not creepy. There are toy cars in there that are in the closet for Gary, and they will say that Gary plays with them and you can hear him playing with them. So I think a lot of people bring objects for Rachel, for Gary, for Jesse to the house. And you'll see a lot of people bring balls also to, have Rachel or Gary kind of push the ball around. Do you want to play ball? Things like that. And so the closet door opening on its own, and then the guests claim to be touched. In Rachel's room, there are balls on the bed, and you'll see pictures of that too, where they put them like on the end of the bed, and they are known to move on their own. There are 2 dolls that are on the bed, so they have dolls all over Rachel's room, and some that sit on the bed, and they're known to make sounds or operate on their own. Don't touch them, guys. Just don't touch them. So, pillows get tied together. It says get tied together by their strings. So I don't know if the pillows are frilly or something, but the pillows are messed with. They can also be seen not only messed up on the bed, but thrown on the floor. And doll hair from dolls in the bed can also be found all over the floor. I'm not sure if it's like in chunks. I don't know if you can tell on the doll, but that's just bleh, nope. In the nursery, so the baby didn't die in the nursery, it died in the master bedroom, but there are some happenings that go on in the nursery. So sconces on the wall have been known to fall without anyone touching them, without anything. Like, yeah. There was a young girl. She was scratched on the tour in that room. A man was pulled down the stairs in this room, causing him to go to the hospital. A mother and daughter were coming down the steps during a tour, and the woman said she was lifted up over her daughter and thrown down the stairs. This all sounds just so great. And a rocking chair in the room moves on its own. This is super creepy, guys. If you've been, please let me know. I'd love to know your story. There's a lot out there. So, in the second floor hallway, you will hear sounds and get immense feelings that someone is in the hallway with you. Footsteps can be heard from the front staircase, and the guests have been pushed. The pushing kills me. Like, it's just someone coming up behind you and pushing you. Even a normal person, it'd be kind of freaky. Like, I don't like surprises, so it's like, that would be scary, but you get pushed, you turn around, no one's there? Come on. So yeah, the servants' quarters, it said, oh wow, I forgot that I put this part in here. Supposedly a girl was choked in that area. They've seen a large horned entity in the closet. It's also known as Virgil's closet, but it's the servants' quarters. A staff member actually ended up being locked in the closet, and the lock is on the outside of the closet door. So that's kind of creepy that they would lock the servants' quarters from the outside. But still, like, she didn't lock herself in there. Like, what the hell happened? And then also guests have been pushed or attacked in the area. So the attic, and where I talked about the attic, is actually known as the seance room. And they have captured an EVP of a man saying, "Get out." And they also have seen a pair of eyes that you can see in the dark when it's super dark there. There's also a red room in the attic, so one that you can stay in. There's multiple rooms up there. So we have seance, we have the red room, and then there's also a middle room. And people have claimed to have nightmares and night terrors when they sleep in that room, and they've been bitten in the room. No, oh no. So then the middle room in the attic, they've heard demonic voices and again have seen eyes in the dark. And then all the way down to the basement, a lot of accounts of being touched and again seeing a dark entity that will like go across the chimney stack or be by it or something like that. So every part of this place is haunted. Just every part, it seems like. And so I have some stories. I did, there was a guy who did a shorter YouTube video that his name on there was Hall Z, Hallzee. And so he's going to stay in this room. 5 minutes in to the room, and the door starts shaking violently, the doorknob, and someone's trying to get into his room. So he got out of the room really quick, looking down the hallway. No one was there, and sadly, he didn't have his camera running. So he took a ton of photos all over the house. Like, you see a lot in his room, but what you'll see is like one photo has an orb or two. The next photo covered in orbs, different sizes, just everywhere. And I believe in orbs. I feel like I know the difference between dust and bugs, and it is insane how many orbs are sitting in this room, just surrounding them. And then the next one will only have one or two again. So it's like he's taking these in succession. It's insane. And he did them all over. His Mel meter went crazy, stuff like that. So he says he caught ghosts on camera, but it's more of just kind of the orbs that were surrounding each room. Very, very creepy. So I also, I've talked to them about them a lot. 303 Paranormal. If you don't know the area code 303, it is in Denver, Colorado, which is my old stomping grounds. And so their video is a little different. There's some things that I didn't hear that they said had gone on, but it was still really good. They heard moans and disembodied voices. They were the one with the live stream where the door opened. They were talking to Rachel a lot. They got a lot of EVPs that said heat, help, and help me. It burnt. And, when you talked about her dolls, she would say yes. They kept feeling like they were being touched. Tons of voices, tons of whispers, and a lot talking about the dolls. They could at one point hear or feel the ground shaking and, EVPs saying, listen. And they would say, hey, can you knock the balls off the bed? Leave ball. And a lot about a fire and she burned. Then they started naming the people who were in the room. There was a man named Jonathan, and they were saying John or Jonathan. One man, I think it was Jonathan, his back started hurting majorly. He was so uncomfortable. And as they're moving around the house, they feel like they're being pushed. They feel like they're about to trip over nothing. And their EMF detector goes crazy, and they're just getting growls. Their batteries are draining, and it's kind of just one thing after another. They hear doctor, they hear help. A guy starts having a massive headache, and there's just orbs in so many of the scenes. So again, it's 303 Paranormal at the Whisper Estates. If you guys want to check that out on YouTube, they did a great job. So I have another one here that I didn't watch, but I found it online at paraholics.com. Really like that website. So this was in 2015. The investors were Craig Smith. He's a part of the Society of Unknown Phenomena, also known as SUP. I like that. Anyways, so there was also Mike Colwell, Emil Ogleville, Damon Megarel, and Evelyn Ogleville. They were all a part of paraholics.com. So they went investigating, and this is some of the activity that they went through. They overheard knocks throughout the house. They got a female voice that was heard by multiple investigators there, a very direct female voice that they could understand. It doesn't say what they said, but they heard a lot of shuffling and footsteps around the house. One of them, their battery completely drained on the flashlight, and then around him, he could hear footsteps just literally circling him. So that was the third floor attic. Their periscope meters, so I'm assuming maybe an EMF meter, would light up upon request. So talking to them and telling, them that they're there. And that's all there was. But they said at the bottom, it said, please note, if you go to Whisper's estate to investigate, there's an extremely high EMF level through much of the building caused by wiring. So you'll feel a high EMF, but that also is a huge conductor for these spirits, So I don't know why I didn't read the last sentence, but this is what it said. I'm going to quote it. It says, quote, in other words, don't get a ghost boner when your K2 flashes like mad. So that was the story from the Facebook group that I have mentioned multiple times. And I'll have the link to that story so you can click and get to that Facebook page also. So there's a family named the Stice family. They did an investigation just recently, January 6th of 23. So I was excited that I found such a recent one. So I'm going to quote it word for word because it is a little bit longer and I want to make sure that I get it all correctly. So the link for this will also be in the show notes. Quote, we encountered a very active and interesting night at Whisper's estate. In the basement, our whole group heard a sound coming from the corner that sounded like a paint can being moved across the floor. 2 people from our group were in Rachel's room and had a marble fall off the bed and roll under it. We decided to all go back down in the basement where we all gathered around the table. We put a REM pod in the same corner where we first heard the sound of the can moving the floor. The REM pod went off and we heard the same sound of what sounded like a paint can moving on the floor. At the same time, our group got very cold and got chills all over their body. The second floor is where we encountered the most. The beach balls in Rachel's room were smacked off the bed multiple times. Multiple people from our group witnessed this happening on a number of times. Each time left a noticeable indentation where the beach ball would have been hit, as well as the sound of it being hit. In Jesse's room, 5 members of our group witnessed Gary's closet door opening. We watched as the doorknob turned on its own and the door swung open. In the hall, some of our members witnessed a small rubber bouncy ball bouncing as they saw it hit the wall and bounce into the bathroom. It says we are not too sure where it came from. As our group gathered all together between Rachel's doorway, the hall, and in Jesse's room, we noticed 3 knocks that were described as knocks on porcelain. A member suggested maybe it was coming from the bathtub. Someone of our members were in the bathroom to replicate the knock on the bathtub, and the sound was exactly what we heard. At that moment, we all gathered in Jesse's room. We heard another set of knocks that sounded exactly as it did the first time. At that time, a member of the group remembered he had his phone recording in Rachel's room sitting on the dresser. As we were all sitting still in Jesse's room, we played the video where we noticed it had captured the sound of the knocking we heard, as well as a red orb floating in the video. As we were passing the phone around to our group talking about it, we then heard a whistle that sounded like it was coming from the end of the hall. It was described as a man's whistle, and it was almost like it was a man whistling to a tune, and it sounded like it was getting closer and closer. At that time, our group freaked out and we all ran back downstairs. 3 members went back downstairs, and at the whistling got right up on them, one of the members was standing on the landing of the stairs and told us there is something there. He was frozen with fear. The other 2 people were still on the stairs. The whistling had stopped at this point, and that's when Rodney went back into the hallway because he wanted to see if he could see anything. When he shined his lights into Jesse's room, the closet door opened again, and that's when the screaming started. It was like it was running at us, getting louder and more aggressive. As it got closer, the screaming turned into moans and growls. There's really no words to describe it. It was as if it was more than just one thing, a horrible sound. At that point, my husband told me to hurry and go downstairs because he felt like something bad was getting ready to happen. That's when we all ran out of the house and gathered everyone outside on the steps to pray the protection prayer. 2 days later, and that's all we can still talk about. Oh, how creepy. Like, even if they didn't get like an entity or something, like, can you imagine? Even an orb, I think, is a big deal. Growling and screaming, and that door continuing to open time after time. No thanks. But so creepy. So that is the end of the Whisper Estates in Mitchell, Indiana. I hope you guys liked it. If you are from Mitchell or have seen that house or been to that house, please let me know your stories in comments or message me anywhere. I would love to hear that. Also, if you want to follow me, I have an Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, and TikTok. And I also, if you'd like to help support the show, I have a Patreon, which also gives you early access to episodes when I actually post them on time. And I would love to do a whole lot more with it. I'm just trying to do some new bonus episodes and things like that. I have a scary dark tale that I do every month on the 13th. Last month was actually on Friday the 13th, which was cool. And then the 23rd of every month, I do a breakdown of a horoscope and birth chart and things like that. So definitely join me for those. Thank you all again for listening. We will see you next week when we head to Oregon. We're going to go to a pretty creepy hotel. I am pumped. All right. I'll see you guys later. Thanks again. Bye.